So now.
Oh, she can hear now.
So you just have to stand here.
Okay.
There's a way to slide that over to the
Sure that-
desk, maybe?
Well, he needs that for the
Yeah,
projection, I think.
I can.
Good.
There's a bonus for that thing.
Questions you could ask
If
about.
we move this over to.
It's not spontaneous.
This is pretty spontaneous, it's at the moment.
It's
I do long term.
It's all ordinary level. So good.
So in the meantime, I can go grab.
Here one?
Yeah. There's an adapter that we have in the other room. I can go grab it.
She said now I can hear him.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
You just have Christina and Ray. Thanks. She's gonna try to find a phone. We're good to go.
Okay, all right. We have one more person who indicated they wish to speak, Cliff Bradshaw. All right, good evening. Last month, the 5 of you voted against sending out a survey asking parents how we feel about a COVID-19 student vaccine mandate. Here's your reasoning for rejecting this resolution. Quote, why take the risk of surveying parents when there is nothing to be gained? Quote, it is in our best interest not to have a survey. Quote, I don't want to do anything to possibly damage our standing with the New York State politicians next year. From these quotes and from your behavior, it is clear that 5 of you don't represent the Duanesburg community. Instead, you represent the politicians in Albany. Sadly, this is not new news. For years, the 5 of you have refused to hear parents' concerns when their views differ from yours. I have many examples of this, but not enough time. Here's a couple. Example 1, numerous Duanesburg parents attended an August 2021 school board meeting, stood up and asked the 5 of you not to pass the resolution containing both a student mask mandate and a forced quarantine requirement for unvaxxed students. Ignoring the strong public outcry, all 5 of you voted to approve the superintendent's school reopening protocols that resulted in so many students being singled out and forced to quarantine simply because you didn't get the jab. They didn't get the jab. So many families, including mine, experienced discrimination last school year at the hands of your resolution. Several times last year, my children were unfairly singled out and forced to quarantine at home simply because they were required to quarantine, simply because they were unvaccinated, while vaccinated students with the exact same exposure were not required to quarantine, even though they were equally prone to getting infected. By the way, my children never came down with COVID because of this exposure. Example 2, January of 2022, the 5 of you again ignored hundreds of Duanesburg parents who signed a petition, attended 3 consecutive school board meetings, standing up to voice their concerns that the implementation of a toxic DEI policy would do more harm than good to our children. Last month, the 5 of you claimed you had to reject surveying parents because your job is strictly locate local school policy and funding. If school policy is your primary job, the 5 of you failed miserably last year. Back then, parents were right and the 5 of you were wrong. Last month, in refusing to survey parents, you have shown your true colors. In aligning yourself with the New York State politicians in Albany, the 5 of you are out of touch with the Duanesburg community. Thank you. Now, it's not typical for the board to address public comments, but I will say that misrepresents much of what the board said, and the entire meeting is available online.
And I got those quotes right from the.
I would urge the And I got the quotes right from.
Your
Excuse
turn
me,
is
your
over,
time
Mr.
is up.
Bradshaw.
Oh, it is, I'm sorry,
I
I
would
thought you were
just-
addressing me.
No,
Okay,
I'm not. I'm just addressing everyone.
I'm sorry, I'm done, thank you.
The complete board meeting is available online, and you can go and see the complete statements by all 7 of the board members.
I'm sorry, I came in late because I missed the memo that was in the cafeteria, but I would like to make a comment, is that okay? Even I signed in, but and I still, if I missed it by 2 minutes, I still make a comment.
Yeah, you can come up and have 3 minutes.
Perfect, thank you.
To possibly include something in the registration that would allow families to indicate if they have problems getting students to practices, if they aren't held immediately after school, and if the kid can't take the late bus. I know that it's really hard to find bus drivers. I know it's really hard to come up with an extra bus to take kids around the district. But I know for one team that my children participated on, there were students who were new to the district, didn't know anybody, and had a really hard time. And if it's the mission of this board to engage in equity, I think it's really important that we address athletic equity and making sure that everybody can get to and from practices and games whenever possible. So thank you for the 3 minutes.
Next up, we have reports. First is the superintendent. Thank you.
I apologize for anybody at home trying to hear things. We really gave it a shot. Hopefully we can work this out for next time.
Mike, Joe said that the mic does work.
I'm hearing it.
Okay. This is gonna be probably extremely. We're not gonna-
Oh.
I'm gonna use my teacher voice.
There it is. There it is.
Okay, we're good. So, last time I talked about our college and the high school program, and this time I'm gonna talk about a different program that's related to occupational and career studies. So, did you know that 41 high school students currently are going to programs at either Albany CTE or Schoharie CTE? So that's a lot of our students who actually attend career and technical education classes. So last time, one of the things that I mentioned was that as a school district, our goal, our mission is to make sure that students fulfill their dreams and aspirations. It says their dreams and aspirations. It doesn't say our dreams and aspirations. And so different students might have different goals. And there's a lot of great trade programs that really need workers as well. And so a lot of these career and technical ed programs prepare students for a life in one of these careers. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about the career and technical ed programs that some of our students attend and give you, I'm going to show a couple of videos, and one of them includes one of our students. So this is a little word cloud that represents the different programs that our students are involved in. The ones that are bigger because we have more students involved in that particular program. So we have students in lots and lots of different programs, including commercial construction, machining, cosmetology, electrical trades, but also newer programs like digital media. And there's also great culinary programs and nursing programs that are fairly traditional programs at BOCES at this point. But there's also a global fashion program that one of our students is in. So I did want to point out that architectural and construction is an older program, but that includes lots of other content areas, including building trades and carpentry and electrical trades, and also entertainment technology. So students actually study kind of the behind the scenes work that goes into entertainment, including making sets, but also residential construction and heavy equipment. And there's also education programs that focus on early childhood education, so you can learn how to be a teacher. This is actually near and dear to my heart. My sister, who is very, very smart, she's currently an assistant principal at Rush Henrietta in an elementary school, and she's a reading teacher, had been a reading teacher for a really, really long time. She's an excellent teacher. When my sister was in high school, it just really wasn't for her. And so she really found her place in the elementary ed program, the early childhood education program at the BOCES at Wayne Finger Lakes. And so there was a person who went from being sort of a average to lower average student in high school to all of a sudden being the president of her honor society at BOCES and really making it her life's work from the work that she did at BOCES as a high school student. And without that program, I don't think that she would have been the success that she has been and found her life's passion. So I'm glad that they offer education programs at BOCES. We also have criminal justice programs. These are our students, by the way, in the pictures, and some of their quotes that they said about their programs. We also have manufacturing programs and retail and office programs like cosmetology and fashion, but also there's a pep tech program. There's all kinds of automotive programs, including diesel. There's also a new health science program. I don't know how new it is now. It's actually been around for quite a long time. It's a New Visions program. And we actually have a student applying to the New Visions program next year to focus on health careers. And as a member of this program, they actually get to do rounds with doctors. There's also a program called Sterile Processing Technician Program, where they get to learn how to operate autoclaves and make things safe for people in hospitals. These are jobs that people can walk into if you have training and make really, really decent money in careers that are really fulfilling. There's also a absolutely world-class culinary program at both the Schoharie and the Albany centers. If anybody's ever eaten the food that these kids make, it is incredible. And so I would very much recommend it. And it is, I mean, the stuff that they turn out is so fancy that I haven't even seen most of it before, but these kids turn into chefs. There's also a lot of information technology programs, including a game design program, a networking program, and then we have a student in the entertainment technology program, and she talks about kind of that program too, and some of the things that are involved in that. So one of the things I wanted to show you today was a video that showcases the new Albany CTE Center. So the new Albany CTE Center is, it's right across the street from where BOCES is. It's on Waterley Shaker Road. And it's a beautiful, they've actually consolidated their buildings into one campus. And this facility is absolutely state-of-the-art. It actually probably represents a cost savings to all the component districts because a lot of the funding for it came from different economic development dollars. But I wanted to show you the video, not just because it's a cool promotional video, but I wanted you to get a sense of what the different places where our kids are working look like.
I'm just gonna have to hold it because if it's gonna blow out the speakers.
On behalf of everyone at Capital Region BOCES, we are so thrilled that you could join us this morning for the celebration. And it's not just a ribbon cutting, it is a celebration for a lot of reasons. You're standing in one of the largest, if not the largest, workforce training hubs in New York State at 170,000 plus square feet. It's right in the middle of Albany County. It's right in the middle of our economic development region. And we are so happy to be part of all that.
Investment in the facilities is incredibly important. If we want to have the staff and the folks trained for 21st century careers now and in the future, you have to have the facilities that represent that.
The opportunities that kids can be exposed to and adults, to give them that opportunity, that is hope.
And now with the opening of this fabulous new career and technical education center, we have a state-of-the-art facility.
It is top-notch. This is competitive with your top colleges and universities. This is what we need in the Capital Region.
I know that I wouldn't have been nearly as prepared for this change if it weren't for my time at CTEC. Apart from the technical skills BOCES provides, they also offer proper college and career preparation, like team collaboration, troubleshooting, and even classroom exercises like public speaking. And I will continue to share my experience at BOCES. I only hope that more parents and students find their way to this great program. Thank you.
As you can see, a really beautiful building with really good opportunities for kids. Our next slide actually features a Dwaynesburg student who's become a poster child for the Career and Tech program. So this is Tyler Drexel. Would you mind tapping on the playground?
My name is Tyler Drexel and I'm from Dwaynesburg High School. I've always liked heavy equipment and construction. I've been around it my whole life, and when I've been involved with it, and I just like moving dirt and looking at the big machines and seeing what you can accomplish with special equipment. My dad, he's been involved with selling building materials for most of his career. So I've been involved with people building houses and seeing how everything goes together. I've learned just general life skills, how to be employable, how to work with other people, how to accomplish a common goal. I learned how to, of course, frame houses and use equipment to kind of work for landscape painting. We paint, we do exterior, interior painting, staining. We can do sheetrock repair, trim, all sorts of stuff like that. I plan on continuing the work where I'm working now and potentially further my education through a college program. I'm looking at the University of Alfred State for their heavy equipment program and potentially SUNY Cobblestone for their ag equipment technologies program. I'd like to own my own company with equipment and do landscaping, ponds and stuff like that.
So I'm just incredibly proud of our students who are in CTE programs. I think it really represents them taking interest in their careers in high school. Almost to a kid, when you go to a CTE program, your focus totally changes. You can see kids maturing because of the programs that they're in, because of the work that they're doing. It's relevant work, it's hands-on work. And I'm really happy to be able to send our students to those programs. One other thing I'd like to say is that it's important that all kids have access to CTE programs. And so you'll find that in many districts, there is a cap that gets put on the number of students that are sent to CTE programs. So from my perspective, not only is that speciously legal, it also represents a real inequity. And so what we want to do is make sure that all students who want to participate in these programs have an opportunity to do so. I wanted to share one last One last program that is in the CTE umbrella, and that is Tech Valley High School. So for the past few years, we've been able to send students to Tech Valley High School. Tech Valley High School, just in full disclosure, was the school where I was a principal for 5 years. However, it is an excellent program, and it is a fully project-based learning program where kids work in partnership with various businesses around the capital region. And they also have the opportunity to do lots of hands-on stuff. And as part of that program, students all participate in different levels of internship every single year. And I've also seen a lot of kids have a tremendous amount of success. I was just talking to a parent just yesterday who told me that her son, who was in an engineering program at Tech Valley High School, is now making prosthetics for a company in the Rochester area after getting his master's degree. And he said that he owes his interest to Tech Valley High School. So it's also a very unique place, another beautiful facility. And it does some things that we do in high school. It's a little different than the other programs in that it's not a half-day program, it's a full-day program. And students get all their other gen ed requirements within that program. But the other thing that's unique about it is that a lot of it is interdisciplinary. So you won't find a lot of courses are merged together, like geometry and CAD. You'll find humanities classes merged together. Classes are quite long, but they all give kids an opportunity to work together and to do authentic, relevant feeling projects with real businesses in the area. So another good opportunity. I think we have a few kids in that program right now, and we're continuing to have interest there. And so we continue to have a desire to participate in those programs too. There's just lots of opportunities that students have. So high school really is comes in lots of different flavors depending on what you want out of it. And these are just some of the ones that we have, including the college and the high school programs that we shared last time. So it can look different depending on who you are. Any of the board members have any questions about this? Yeah.
I think it's very good. We'll send anyone who's interested to have this pass. Do they have faculty members that go and sign from us?
Yep, they sure do. So they all have caps for their programs because, like a program like welding, you obviously can't have all the kids who are interested in welding in that shop at the same time. It would be very dangerous. So yeah, it is capped based on, they are also experiencing some of the same work shortages that everybody else is. And so, and you could probably imagine that if you're a welding teacher, you become a pretty attractive welding trainer for lots of companies. And so it's hard for them to keep their qualified instructors. But they have a really good staff, and they try to offer the programs as needed. So, rarely our kids will get turned away from their first choice programs, but they always have the kids come back to see other programs that they might be interested in. And they keep them on waiting lists in case something does open up. Yeah.
And how are kids admitted to each program? First come, first serve basis, or is there a different algorithm?
So I don't know the answer to that, if it's first come, first serve. I know I can only speak to Tech Valley, and that is a random lottery. And all school districts get the same shot at the slots. But for the other programs, I'm not sure if it's like, I believe that it's the first people who put in the applications get first choice, but I'm not 100% sure. Yep.
So you said that there's currently 41 students?
Yep,
right?
41 students.
So is that our cap? 41?
Nope, that's the number of kids that are currently attending those programs.
And then is that
Just so
grade-
happens.
Is that grades 11 and 12?
11 and 12.
Oh, and I know that game design wasn't available this year. Do you know if it'll be coming back next school year by any chance?
The game design program at CTE?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what their situation is with the individual programs. So I know if they can hire somebody, they'll bring stuff back.
Okay, so it's dependent on if they can
Yeah,
get a teacher.
and they also will change programs depending on job market. So if something changes, as you could see, a lot of their funding comes from economic development sources. And so it's a pretty huge training opportunity for all of these different businesses. And so, and a cost savings for them to have these kids trained before they even get to them. And so if they're telling BOCES, these are really the things that we need. BOCES sometimes makes decisions to say, okay, maybe we won't offer this, but we'll offer this higher demand program instead. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jeff.
What's that?
This, the mic goes out.
There we go. I'm not standing for the mic. All right. So tonight would be the second work session that we've had for the budget. We had a preview of the budget in January and then a work session on February 15th. So far, the status of where the budget work is right now is that we talked about the tax levy, general support portion of the budget, athletics, extracurricular, and instructional technology the last time. And then tonight, I'll share the operations and maintenance portion, the transportation, the school bus proposition, and the BOCES budget. So first, a little quick snapshot of the revenue side of the budget. So first off is the tax levy. So we're looking at the tax levy increase of 1.96% from year to year. That makes a total overall dollar increase of $167,321. So this is again, the tax cap was actually calculated at around 3.71%. So we elected to actually go out with a lower percent than what our actual cap allows. So we do have that flexibility that if we needed to go out with a little bit more and collect more taxes if we needed to for our budget. So this is a look at the revenue or the state aid based on what we budgeted for last year or for the 22-23 school year. And then compared, and then for the 23-24 look is at the governor's budget, which came out on February 1st. So the biggest thing that we saw the increase in is the foundation aid at 3% from year to year. So this is the third year in a row we've received that foundation aid increase of 3%. The other things that came in was the expansion grant for the pre-kindergarten. That I will remind you all is not actually part of the general fund budget. It is actually a separate grant that funds that UPK program. And then while we continue to use BOCES services for a lot of our things that we do, just because it makes a lot of sense to be in that big consortium, we have continued to see that the BOCES aid actually comes back also, seems to increase as well. So as we keep finding services within BOCES, we'll continue to try and use that because we, of course, get that aid, that state aid back the following year. Transportation aid, that's one of the things that seems to have fluctuated from year to year. So the last time we spoke, I actually showed that the governor's proposal actually shows the 22-23 school year amount to be a little bit lower than what we actually budgeted for. So there may be some kind of a gap by the time the year ends. But right now I'm showing the actual what we budgeted on that 22-23. So a slight increase from year to year, from this year to next year. And then our building aid is decreasing because our debt service has also started to decrease from that project that we did in 2000, that we started in 2016 through 2018.
So before you go on, I just want to point out that we'll probably get the one house budgets maybe next week, maybe the week after that. And the final budget isn't due until April 1st. So this is right now a draft, but we don't expect a heck of a lot of change from this to what we're going to get. We're certainly not going to get any changes related to foundation.
Any reports on the drama passing the budget this year?
What?
Are there any reports on if it will happen first?
Yeah, everybody anticipates that it's gonna be an on-time budget this year. So from everything you hear, everybody says that it's a simple budget. And so we should be able to get there.
So just a quick little snapshot revenue summary for where we're at. We don't have a complete number yet with the budget, so just giving you kind of the revenue side of where we're at. Just looking at appropriations to balance the budget. So we are still kind of looking at some sort of a gap this year with our budget, but we do have reserves. So we'll right now appropriate $120,000 into the budget with a fund balance rollover of $946,000. So we still have some work to do this month. So those numbers may fluctuate a little bit, and then we'll have a budget total for April. Since the last time that we spoke, I have dove into the budget quite a bit and found some areas that might have created some additional fund balance. So we've reduced the actual overall budget by about $95,000. So we have seen some, we're trying to bring that down a little bit. Right now, we're looking hopefully at a little bit less than $19 million at this point. So this current year, I'll just remind you all, is that the budget total for the 22-23 school year was actually $18,600,000. So still some, you might see that number, that 18.9 number fluctuate a little bit because we still have some instructional things and in those categories, like anything that's instructional, we have some work to do this month. So we'll see that change a little bit. Just an overall look, just a graphic for you to, this is just from the previous slide, just kind of a visual of the previous slide and where our revenue comes from. So real property taxes and state aid are those two biggest categories of where we get our revenue. So we rely greatly on either getting state aid or having to balance the rest of the funding out with the taxes. So looking at the expenditure side, so we'll talk about operations and maintenance tonight. So I brought those two categories together because they are very similar. So operations and maintenance are what keeps our facilities flowing, clean, functioning, and any equipment that needs to be used by our facilities team to maintain our facilities. So we also pay our water and sewer bills with those as well. We are on, like, for instance, this building right here is actually on village water. So we also have village sewer hookups, so we do have to pay for those services. So also included in the operations budget, over the years, we've been working on trying to replace old equipment, whether it be falling apart or just needs to be replaced. So we've got kind of a plan that we replace equipment as it gets to be about 10 to 16 years, depending on the piece of equipment. So over the past few years, we've been rotating between either a piece of equipment like a tractor or a truck. So last year, we had replaced the truck. It actually took over 18 months to actually receive. So this year, instead of me just coming out and saying, this is the piece of equipment that we're going to purchase in the budget, there's some things that we need to consider in the budget for next year. So instead of increasing the budget line, we just left that flat equipment at the same amount. Because as we get into the into the 23-24 school year, we're going to take a look and see what is actually available in supply, and that way we can get our best price on a piece of equipment that we may need. So this is what makes the most sense, so that we can kind of conserve our funds, so that if we can purchase something a little bit more available at the time, it'll be better off. Like also, so this past year, one of the things that we ran into trouble with was we had budgeted for a scissor lift, and it took forever until just a few weeks ago or about a month ago, that went on and actually was able to get somebody who had one that was available. So it's been very difficult to purchase supplies and equipment. So this is something that's ongoing. We need to continue to replace equipment so that it's functioning, so we can maintain our facilities. So overall look at the operations budget. A lot of the increases we're seeing though with our operations budget is for heating fuel. So that's also, you're gonna see the same thing when we get to transportation. Electricity a little bit more too, so electricity costs are going up. And of course, the supplies and contractual things. Any contracts that we use to like pest control, for instance, those are things that we all have to contract with to maintain our facilities. And then made the adjustments with the salary lines. So you see some fluctuations there with salary lines, but there hasn't been really a big fluctuation with overall, because what we've done is taken one of the salary lines and adjusted them to people that are actually in different salary lines. Found some salary lines that were kind of not aligned to the right people, so just doing some in-system changes. So you'll see that on the budget. Transportation, so there's a lot to the transportation budget. Things like tires, fuel costs, the salaries for all of our drivers and transportation staff. This all includes bus drivers, the supervisors, the monitors. So, and then also we have things that maintain the bus garage. So we also have to pay for village sewer at the bus garage, electric, and any other supplies to keep the buses running. So we've also seen an increase on supply costs for our buses this year. Our transportation supervisor has told me that the brake costs alone have gone up about 33% from last year. So we're looking at some huge increases. We've got to be able to keep good brakes on the buses. So we do have to budget for that and prepare for that. Driver salaries also, as it is a contractual thing, those are going to increase, as well as that gasoline price. So we currently only buy gasoline and propane for our buses. We do not have any diesel buses on our fleet. So for the bus proposition for next year, we've received back our quotes for the buses, and we're looking at about $380,000. So what we would be proposing for the proposition would actually be a cap of a maximum of about $400,000. So that's what you see on the proposition. We've been warned by the vendor that New York State actually may fluctuate some of their costs. So we have to kind of gauge that as well. So this year we haven't done this in a while, but we are looking to purchase our large bus as a propane bus. So in the years past, we've purchased the electric buses. I'm sorry, not electric buses. I haven't gotten to that yet. The gasoline powered buses. And then also, so the two smaller buses will be gasoline powered. We also recently had been awarded an electric bus grant. However, it's just much too difficult for this district right now to get the infrastructure. Not only that, but we also have a capital project that's coming up in 2025. Also, what we've learned is that installing units like that would cost a lot of money, and then it may be not the right place that we installed it in, and we're end up ripping it out. So propane is actually a much cleaner burning fuel. It's the same engine as the gasoline engine, but the fuel is actually burns cleaner. So
I just want to just to point out. So have you found out yet if we're able to use the funds from the grant to purchase propane buses?
No, they are still. I've been communicating back and forth with the grant folks from the EPA. So we may or may not be able to use the grant funds towards the propane bus or towards a portion of it. It is significantly less because they want us all to buy the electric buses, but it looks about $30,000 if we were able to get that funding. So that may decrease the cost of that propane bus, but,
So Jeff, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but I think you probably know it, so that's why I'm asking. So propane bus up here, so first of all, it's important to know that, so the governor's plan to phase out gasoline buses over time. Sometimes it gets, there's a kind of referred to as the electric bus transition, but it's really a zero emission bus project. And so propane is also a zero emission bus that our mechanics have worked with. Propane bus, up there it says a propane bus is $174,000. Offhand, the cost of a similar passenger size electric bus right now.
it's about $385,000.
Okay. So they're much more expensive. There's a lot of costs associated. So there's a lot of benefits to having electric buses. The fact is that the infrastructure to support the electric buses isn't really there yet. And so there's got to be some modification to the project as it exists now, starting with what does National Grid say we can support? Because right now they say that we cannot support all these school districts transitioning to electric buses. So instead of just sort of dabbling in electric buses and ending up putting in something that 5 years from now is no longer the right plug station or doesn't have the right software to be compatible with the new electric buses, we're going to stick with what we know. It is also zero emissions. It is far less expensive. And we'll continue to watch as technology grows for electric buses and as the infrastructure concerns are answered, we'll continue to watch that. So, but for right now, this is what we think is a middle step. And thankfully, our mechanics have experience working with this kind of bus too.
So also with this, the proposal for a 71 passenger bus, this allows us the ability to upgrade for the extended fuel. So we'd actually be able to take this to sporting events, field trips, especially locally here in the capital region. We should be able to take the propane bus actually on a trip, which was a fear years ago that we wouldn't be able to make it back. So
limited places to fill up.
Because you can't really fill up. It's not that easy. I mean, maybe, you might be able to pull into a suburban propane.
It takes so many, cylinder replacements.
So,
Jeff, do we have the propane infrastructure?
we do already. It's already there. Yep.
I think Jim spoke into this, but just to clarify, the phase in for the electric buses isn't really an electric bus phase, and it is just zero emissions.
Zero emissions, yes.
So essentially, we really could go this
continue
propane
doing
route
propane.
for the duration, at least the way things are written right now.
And can we use the grant?
We don't know yet. So the grant right now is from the EPA. We're not sure if they're, and I don't know that they wouldn't have approved it had we done propane initially. It's just the fact that when we wrote it for an electric bus. Am I right about that?
Yeah, because they told us that we were going to get a fully funded bus.
At the time, we didn't really know how much electric buses were, or the availability of electric buses, or how much they weighed, or all of the fun facts that we now know about electric buses.
Yeah, so what they did award us was actually the ability to purchase a bus, like a 30-passenger electric bus, which gets you about 97 miles before a charge. So that's actually less than a run. Go pick up some kids and take them to school. So that would present a real difficulty for us to run it. It would probably sit in the parking lot. So it would be one expensive brick. Though we don't have any smaller propane powered buses, but that may be something that comes down the line.
And there are conversions that you can do for gasoline buses to convert them into propane buses.
There might be. I don't know the answer to that.
Is that something we could ask our mechanics?
Yeah, I can find that out.
It's more fun to ask you right now.
It's fine.
I have a feeling it's gonna be, yes, they exist. Probably.
It is.
So are these 3 buses replacing buses that we currently have, or are these 3 additional buses?
Nope, so we'll be replacing buses that have reached either a 10 or 11-year mark. So the large bus that we're actually replacing with the large bus, it's got quite a bit of rust on it right now underneath on the undercarriage. I've been informed that that bus doesn't have that much longer before it does fail a DOT inspection. So right now, it's still okay. It did pass an inspection actually yesterday. But we don't know how long it's gonna be before it fails, because it's 11 years old. So. And then, the one bus, one of the buses that's being replaced is a little more expensive because it's a wheelchair accessible bus. The wheelchair lifts are pretty expensive on those. So a look at the budget for BOCES. So in each one of or in many of our categories for the budget, there's also a BOCES line. And that's the object code of a .490. And you'll see that in your budget lines as well for many of the budgets. So the purpose of having BOCES is for districts to be able to pool our resources, and like the presentation that was given tonight by Dr. Niedermeyer, to be able to send kids out to a larger facility and train them to be able to be ready for the job force. But we also use BOCES for things like training, professional development, and there's a lot of other tools that BOCES can give us. So any of the districts here in the region, they utilize BOCES for their resources for the same thing. So when we purchase things like even like copy machines, for instance, we actually purchase it through BOCES because we get aid on making purchases like that through BOCES. So they can purchase at a larger amount because there's other BOCES, or there's other districts that are actually purchasing the same things. So we get better pricing that way, and then we get the aid the following year.
Jeff,
Yep.
does BOCES do buses?
No, they don't. No, they don't. But they're one of the BOCES, HFM BOCES. They actually have like a combined transportation facility for Johnstown and Gloversville. So they have to purchase their own buses, but that's because they have a shared facility right between those two districts that are pretty close together.
I'll also share that one of the things that we'll be talking about at our next countywide meeting is that same thing, like whether or not it's feasible to have a shared transportation facility in our region, especially because a lot of our buses are in the same places.
So typically, on average, all of our BOCES services pooled together gives us over a 50% aidability. So it makes a lot of sense to use BOCES. So all these services, it comes back to us. So I apologize for you not being able to see from that, but this is there's a lot of budget lines that we use that have BOCES in it. But one of the largest portions of that BOCES budget is to send kids to the CTE programs. But the largest one you see up there is special education. So there is some savings because BOCES has so many special education programs. They've got programs that we just can't provide here in the district. So we do have to send kids to BOCES programs, and then we do get the aid back on those programs. Also, just regular education services. That's the other, the third highest line there that you see. And then the one that just keeps creeping up is computer-aided instruction. So using technology in schools is consistently, as we talked about the last session, technology is just increasing, but we continue to use that BOCES service to get the aid, especially because it's such a need. Yes,
Is our food service, I know, is through BOCES, do we get paid back on that as well?
yes.
Thanks.
So the BOCES budget, slight increase from year to year. So most of the services actually increased at about 3% or less from BOCES. So we didn't have to increase our budget by too much for BOCES, but those increases again are just the data processing, general instructional, the CTE programs, and then the technology. Those are the big ones, and they also are going to have to increase. So tonight we reviewed operations and maintenance, transportation, and BOCES, and we'll go up to the board for discussion.
So yeah, so now it's time to discuss any of those components of the budget or anything we can discuss earlier components of the budget. Do you have what your last slide is probably what's next, right? Just a preview, so next time, debt service, employee benefits, instructional and special education. So instructional and special education, employee benefits are definitely three of the biggest categories that we have. So those are some ticket items, so that's what we have left. And then after that, we will have gone through all the different portions of the budget. And then we'll be going on into the community budget presentations and public hearings. So what questions do you have about these sections?
So I see all the budget information that you provided, and I also look at the reports that were given for each meeting. I know everybody's crying about electric bill, and I saw how expensive the electric bill is. It's about what, 70,000 right now. That we paid so far, based on the report that I think it says there. Is there any way to reduce electricity usage, such as, unplugging things? What do we do to reduce that?
So you can see most of our lights have been converted to LED. We do have people come in to do assessments every once in a while to find out what different things that we can do to reduce our electricity costs. I think we just recently did that, right?
Yeah, we've also said, like anything like holiday lights and things like that, was, make sure that you unplug them, turning projectors off. So we do send out reminders to staff too. And then as the custodians will go through the rooms at night, if they notice that something's on, of course, they'll shut it off for us, because they know that we're trying to conserve as much energy as possible. At one point, we did have an energy specialist here years ago, and it was a BOCES service. However, it was only, he would just show up at random and either kind of take a snapshot of whatever he saw. But a lot of it was something that our facilities director can do. And it makes it didn't make sense to actually get that service because it just, there were things that were getting unplugged by our energy specialists that shouldn't have been unplugged, like a server. And
I mean, we have the capital fund project, part of that is retrofitting some of the stuff at the
Yeah, you're right. So other places that need LED lights, updated appliances that are more energy efficient. Windows make a big difference. We were already told by a teacher in the elementary school that she is experiencing for the first time in her career no draft. And so that was exciting. So as we replace all the windows, we'll hopefully save on the heating cost, which is a real big ticket energy item for us. Is heating. So
in addition to that, though, we have our systems are on schedules. So the heat will come down at night. So Anand actually is able to manage when it comes on in the morning, and then there's some of the rooms, as they've been updated, like the auditorium, for instance, when it's occupied, will only go on when it's in occupied mode, and then will come down when there's nobody in there. So some of the rooms are actually able to detect whether somebody's in the room or not. And the same thing goes for the lights. So you'll notice in a lot of the classrooms, as you walk in, it'll turn on automatically. You don't have to touch the light switch, and then when you walk away, give it probably about 5 minutes, and it'll shut off because it doesn't see anybody in there. So we try to do as best as we can to try and save that energy, but because of the fact that energy costs, as we all have seen on our own bills, it seems to have been creeping up quite a bit.
I could say for sure, it was very cold here over February. You're doing a great job.
It was.
Jeff also rides the thermostat, the district
Oh, yeah,
office,
no,
so
no.
we're doing our part as well.
Are there any other areas that can, and I'm not talking about after school cities, but that's not what I'm referring to. I'm just wondering if there's any other area where, you know, it could lessen the tax levy.
Did you see things in looking at reports that you thought?
Well, I mean, we're not at the end of the school year, so I don't know how much excess revenue money is gonna be left over. But for the buses that were already purchased for $315,000, there's still $14,000 left. So will that be carried over to the 3 buses that you would like to purchase for next year? Or where does that $14,000 left over go?
The 14,000.
So according to the spreadsheet for this month, it said that, well, actually, it's been on there for the last 2 floor meetings. It said cost of buses for this year that was approved by taxpayers is $315,000, I believe, and there was $14,000 left over.
We didn't borrow all of it. So like that's, so when I say we have a maximum borrow of 400,000, for instance, and the cost of the total of the buses is 380. We're not gonna borrow any more than what we need to borrow to pay the debts. So our buses are borrowed on a 5-year term because we get state aid, or we get aid, also transportation aid, to assist with the payback of those buses. So our transportation aid is about 79.8%. So we get a pretty good amount of money back to pay for those buses over the 5-year term. So the loans for all 3 of those buses will be 5 years, and then it'll lay out. So when we say that we have a maximum amount to borrow, we're always going to go either that or lower. And typically, what we'll do is we'll set a cap that is a little bit higher than the actual quote, just in case the state fluctuates with their prices, their pricing agreements. Because we have seen a lot lately, we have seen things, even though they're on New York State contract, we've seen New York State contract prices go up, even though they said that they were locked in. So
The one thing that I want to point out too, Jeff, is so the cap that we could have gone to is like 3.71 or something like that.
Yes.
So we started the 3.71 as the total revenue that we collected, and then Jeff will gradually reduce it until we get to a point where we know this is the amount that we need to ask the community to fund for the schools. So we have never come to the point where we're asking them for everything we could ask for. We only ask for what we need. It's important to not underfund too many lines, because then what can happen is you find yourself, with a big hole that you can't fill. And this is a pretty big investment. So say you underestimate the money, then you have problems there too. Or you don't fund your reserves adequately. Then you're in trouble when we have an event like we had the last 2 years. So, I hear what you're saying, and I know that it's tough for people to pay any taxes. Any increase is a substantial amount for most families, but we wouldn't recommend that unless it's something that we need to have.
But I just wanted to pass out an article that I found. That's okay. It's just,
While you're passing out, so the other thing that I'll share with you is that
The other side of the meeting, I was highlighting that, the highlighter ran out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm glad that you passed this out. So Governor Hochul has said on 3 different occasions now that schools should really look at going out at 0% because of the record funding that the state of New York has given to school districts. Now, when she's saying that the state of New York has given record funding to school districts, she's not talking about the school districts that have the 2.99% safe harmless foundation fee limits that we have. So those school districts have to contend with a 3% increase in the face of 7 point whatever percent inflation. Right? What she means is some of the schools that have been underfunded for the last decade and are getting 41% increases in foundation fee this year, like some of our area schools are getting. Not to say that they aren't deserving of the 41% increases when they have not been funded for years and years, but we have school districts in our region that are going to go out at 0 because they have, $30 million more to deal with than last year. And I'm really legitimate when I say that one of the school districts has like 41, one has like 47. A lot of the suburban districts have these really game-changing increases. That ain't us, and it's never going to be us. And every time we don't ask the community to contribute in part to the budget, what we're doing is saying we're never going to have that money again, because we can never recapture that money. And so what that places us at the risk of doing is that down the road, we have to ask the community to exceed the cap. But I hear what you're saying. I hear what the governor's saying. What I'm saying is that the governor, in making these comments, is not considering the fact that not all schools are getting record increases, and certainly not us. We are getting 2.99% increase.
It looks like she's also talking about how much property taxes alone are going to increase. So in this article, there's 2 concerns. There's your property taxes and there's school taxes. Increase of both. Property taxes, if this is in fact passed, and they're saying it most likely will be passed, records to the property tax increase, people in our area will be suffering too. And that's just my main concern. This article really concerned me, even though it's the 1.96 that the school's asking for. It's going to be even less money that residents are going to have to support themselves.
That is totally true, and I totally agree with you that we never want to ask for more money.
So this year, expenditures have been much higher than we've ever seen, and it's because of the inflation. If we were to go any direction with taxes, I'd advise that we might consider going up, but I don't want to go up. I know we don't want to go up. So we want to try and balance. We want to try and stay balanced with budget. Like I just mentioned in transportation, that parts alone have gone up, brakes have gone up 33%. We're seeing that all around, so we have to find that balance, or else we're going to be looking at cutting programs, and that's not what we want to do. And we'd like to do what we can for kids and do what's best for education. So this year with the expenses, with inflation, we haven't seen. Last year when I stood up at budget, inflation was around, it was like 8%. It hasn't gone down below 6 since then. So with a tax increase of 1.96, that's not even touching that 7% average that we've seen over the year. So that's what we're considering. If you increase it a little bit, it won't be so painful later on when we realize that the carpet's been ripped out from underneath us and we don't have any more funding. So again, this is the last year that we are getting that 3% in foundation aid. That fiscal cliff they keep warning about. We don't know what next year is going to be. because they're also talking about a recalculation of the foundation. So if they recalculate it based on whatever scenario they want to calculate it on, we could lose money. And we may be trying to fund that gap with other funds that aren't there because we didn't continue to increase taxes with inflation.
So I know we use BOCES and a lot of what we purchase from BOCES is aidable and it comes back to us. Where is the direct correlation and where is that reimbursement going and being reallocated in our budget?
So revenue category. So when we presented the revenue section of the budget, it's one of the revenue sections.
Okay, so it just goes directly into.
Goes directly into the budget. Yep.
Okay, so if we were to consider how much more we're getting from BOCES, is there any way, since we've been utilizing that, to help offset this tax levy instead of increasing it as much? Because essentially it's still more revenue coming in, and it's the sum total of everything that comes in, not just comparing tax levy over year to tax levy year over year.
So the increase in revenue continues to pay for the increase in services. So as the BOCES budget increases, the revenue may increase. So the revenue is looking like it could increase for next year, but then so did our services. So that's why increasing the BOCES budget. I mean, this year it wasn't around like 3% or less, right? Overall.
It's a difficult year to go around.
It is.
But once you're on it, if you stay on it, it sort of funds, starts funding itself.
So
How
that
many extra services have we added in that equation?
not necessarily added services, but just the services continue to go up too. So as we continue to subscribe to the same things, we are also we're seeing those same things just continue to increase as well. I'll use, for example, if we send a kid to an outplacement for a special education placement, they are continuing to raise their costs. And if they're raising their costs on a program that costs us $90,000, and we get a 3% increase, cost-wise for that program, and we've only got, if you look at the BOCES, the difference on BOCES aid. So our BOCES state aid increase is estimated only $15,000 for next year. That's not 3% of our BOCES services that we have. So it's actually not making up for the whole. So we have to make up for that difference somewhere. So if we want to subscribe to the same services, if we need to place a kid in a program, we have to make up for that less than 3% somewhere.
Although there was one big increase this year, and that was the food service switch from having a local food service director to having a local food service director. That was large. But other than that, the services that you're seeing from year to year are just the number of kids interested in CTE. That will make it fluctuate. Number of special ed students that we have in the programs and what those programs are. Those change the programs from year to year too.
Also, if you continue to go out with a low percentage or a 0%, there was a district, I think I mentioned this a while ago, there was a district in the region that went out notoriously with a very low number in their tax levy and then realized that they had to make up for a difference or else they had really cut a lot of stuff for kids and ended up going out with a somewhere around like 20% increase on tax levy, which is insane. We don't want to have to do that. So we want to be responsible and increase our budget at a reasonable rate each year to make up for those differences, to pay for the increases in programs.
Other questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Jeff, did I hear you right when you said you dug into the budget a lot since our last meeting?
Yep.
And you were able to reduce the overall budget by about $95,000.
Yes.
So where are we going to see that savings? Because that in of itself is pretty close to that gap of the tax levy that we're talking about right now. So what are we gonna be doing with that 95,000?
So last time I spoke about, there was a gap, so I'll show you the revenue. So the last time that we spoke, the reserve appropriation and the fund balance appropriation was significantly higher, or the need for that. So I had showed a $100,000 reserve appropriation with a fund balance appropriation of over $1 million. And that's not really a feasible option. So that's where the difference comes from. So in cutting the expenditure, the need for additional revenue is not there. So that's where you're seeing the difference, is now that we don't have a gap in funding. Because what I could have done was showed, the last time I could have just showed a big red number that said, we have a shortage. But instead, I showed it as we're gonna dig into savings as best as we can to try and fund the overall expenditure. So it's not like we're not using our savings to fund the budget. We're at that point right now where we're trying to fund the budget with our savings and increasing the revenue, or the reserve appropriation by $120,000. I don't really want to have to do that because we want to save our money, because we continue to get these threats that the foundation aid is going to get recalculated next year. We don't know what next year looks like. It looks, they keep saying that it's going to get worse. So
Where do you feel comfortable with the reserve appropriation in a normal year?
in a normal year, I'd like to keep it at near $100,000 or less, because once you start using that, then you know that the following year you're going to need it again, and you're going to need it again because things keep increasing. The expenditures keep increasing, so you've got to make up that difference with it somewhere. So once you start to tap into that reserve, it's going to be hard to get back to the fact that you don't need it. So so that's where the difference is coming from, in the 95 that I mentioned, is that it was over 19 million in some of the work. So some of the work that I did was in some instructional lines, because there's a lot in instructional. So you haven't seen the instructional budget yet. But I also was able to cut some out in the categories that we spoke about tonight too. So before I came to budget work session, those were some of the things that we made cuts in.
We'll continue to put all this stuff down.
Yeah.
But it is important to us to make sure that our reserves and our fund balance stays at an appropriate rate. So we're 4% fund balance is healthy. I don't know any school district that just carries a 4% fund balance, because big things happen and then you're out of luck if you don't have the money. So it's never a good idea to continue to deplete your reserves. So
I'm sorry, one more question. If the tax levy is not approved, will that affect the capital project that we have planned going forward?
No.
other questions?
What does the 1.9 whatever equate to? I understand that.
To an average tax.
Per house.
Oh, yes.
40,000.
You do that nice graphic, Jeff, where you give an average household.
Yeah, I did that a couple of sessions ago, right?
Right,
Yeah,
their house value.
it was less, like on a $300,000 house, it was like about $100 or less. I want to say it was actually less than that, maybe 90.
You have that on the next presentation. That chart.
Yeah. But remember, that's a ballpark number. It's not.
Of course.
Because
Every town is different.
Yeah, well, because your tax rates aren't actually out yet, so it's just a ballpark estimate.
Any other questions? Thanks.
You're welcome.
Presentation and approval of prior Board of Education meeting minutes. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the meeting minutes from the February 15, 2023 meeting as submitted. Do I have a motion? Motion. Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Francis. Questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to Board of Education Standing Committee reports. First up is audit.
Yes, the audit committee, Teresa and Sarah and I met with Jeff on March 1st. We reviewed 3 RPFs for the, every 5 years, we have to have a, have it go out to people to make bids about who's gonna do the audit for the school. This is it. We never got one back from the one that we've been working with for years. The 3 were uncomparable, really. I mean, and so we decided that we recommend that they go with Weston Company for future audit preparation, and we're gonna be voting on that resolution this week.
Building and ground, anything to report?
We have not met, but the capital, the parking loop project is complete with the windows that were installed by the elementary school over February break. And I just heard tonight that teachers are glad that their windows aren't leaking anymore. So we've already made progress.
Great, that's a good thing. And lastly, policy.
Policy committee has not met since our last meeting.
Thank you. Moving on to financial items. Accept financial reports. Recommendation to the Board of Education accept the appropriation status, budget transfer, revenue status, and treasurer's reports ending January 31, 2023. Capital warrant HQ1, the amount of $20,000, and general warrant A27, the amount of $293,334.51, dated February 16, 2023, as provided and recommended by the treasurer and assistant superintendent of management services. Do I have a motion? Tony, and a second? Melissa, thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, award external auditor bid. Recommendation that the Duanesburg Board of Education award the external auditor bid to Weston Company at a cost of $18,500 as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services and Audit Committee. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Ines, second? Sarah, thank you. Questions or comments?
I mean, it's significantly cheaper than all the other bids.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're gonna do the whole job, right? I mean,
I've heard good things.
Okay.
I've heard.
All right.
In our assessment, it looked like the more expensive one was actually giving us an added service of
Okay.
technology that we already have covered.
Super.
So it really just makes sense.
Great.
And also, I mean, I checked the reviews.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Their reviews are good.
Yeah,
it's just significant.
Yeah.
I
this
also
is
will,
the folks at Gloversville, right?
yes.
Yeah, I have personal experience with them, they're very responsive and excellent, so I'm glad that they came in where they did.
I will add that the portion of the budget, which we talked about the last time, I was actually able to reduce that line that we had budgeted for because of the fact that.
Yeah.
This.
Great.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to personnel items. Accept resignations. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Amanda Stigberg, teacher aide, effective February 20, 2023, and Megan Busta, teacher aide, effective March 6, 2023. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Francis. Second? Melissa, thank you. Questions or comments?
Just to point out that we are assigning them again,
Yes.
just in a couple of months.
Yes.
So we're not losing these employees, we are promoting them.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve termination C. Johnson. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Duanesburg Board of Education hereby terminates the employment of Krishana Johnson as the Director of Transportation for the district, effective February 27, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Avis. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tony. Questions or comments on this one? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we're circling around. Approval appointment A. Stigberg. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation. Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, I did. Please excuse me. Backing up. Approve appointments. Recommendation of the Board of Education approve the following appointments as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. All appointments are employees at will. An appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school term year. Benjamin Davis and Devin Colucci Maggie as listed. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Melissa. Sarah, will you second? Thanks. Questions or comments?
Hold on just one second.
Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Got carried away before, but here we are. Approve appointment A. Stigberg. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education appoints Amanda Stigberg to a 4-year probationary appointment as a teaching assistant in the teaching assistant tenure area, TA Step 1, commencing February 20, 2023, and ending February 19, 2027, contingent upon compliance with the requirements of education law. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Francis. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, Tony, thank you. Questions or comments on this one?
Just that I think it's great that, I mean, first off, I know she's a local mother, just like Megan Busta later. I think it's great that she's been involved in school at all, and then that she's doubling down and increasing and becoming a TA and continuing on with this is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's good to see people move up too.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next item. Approve reassignment T. Brad. Recommendation of the Board of Education approve the following reassignment as recommended by the superintendent and assistant superintendent of management services, effective February 27, 2023. Tammy Brad, head school bus driver, civil service permanent appointment, with a probationary term of February 27, 2023 to February 27, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Tony, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Davis, thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Final personnel item. Approve appointment M. Kapusta. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education appoints Megan Kapusta to a 4-year probationary appointment as a teaching assistant in the teaching assistant tenure area, TA Step 5, commencing March 6, 2023, and ending March 5, 2027, contingent upon compliance with the requirements of education law. Do I have a motion? Melissa, thank you. A second? Francis, thanks. Questions or comments?
Just a comment that Mrs. Kapusta is delightful. The kids love her, and she just received an award from Mrs. Conover at the PBIS on Friday. So Just to echo Francis, I'm thrilled that she's moving up as well. She's an asset to our elementary school.
Yeah, I'll say also, so just support staff in the elementary school and high school is totally essential. Also dealing with, not only in their daily duties, but also helping to, provide some kind of relief for the substitute shortage that the school district has. So in becoming TAs, so we're recognizing the fact that these folks can teach in classes. There's some planning differences that TAs have from teachers, but for all intents and purposes, they can be in the classroom with students and teach them, which we've been really asking them to do all along, because we just have not had subs. I do not know how principals and the support staff folks and secretaries in offices are managing to patch things together every single morning. But they still are. So we've gotten some local substitutes, and that's been helpful as well. But really, it's a pretty incredible feat every morning in the offices.
Anyone else? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving on to board review of revised policies. So we have 5 different policies. I guess we'll start with the top.
Just in summary for all of them. So we get policy updates from Erie One BOCES, which is another BOCES service that we subscribe to. So Erie One keeps track of all the law changes and then recommends how districts might want to consider changing their policies as a result of laws changing. And so what I do is on a monthly basis, they send out a newsletter and we monitor, what the different policy changes are, and then quarterly they'll put out a summary of all the different law changes, policy changes that they recommend. And so these are the ones that, after the policy committee met, decided that it was worth revising. Some of them, there's a law change and some of the minor changes, but it doesn't really affect how the policy is going to operate. But these are the ones that had kind of small changes that, were, made a meaningful difference, but none of them are like new policies or overhauls. It's just like maybe an additional section was added or some language changed, depending on it. So we could go through any or all of them that you have questions about what the changes were. But all of these are existing policies that we've had.
Okay, good, thanks for the background. Policy 6121, sexual harassment in the workplace. Anyone have anything on that one they want to discuss? Okay, how about 6550, leaves of absence? Yes, Davis.
So, I'm just wondering, why was it changed from her to there when in the law it says her?
I think that they changed all the pronouns, and then when we also did the overhaul of the policy manual, we changed all the, Teresa was here, she would remember that for sure, but I think we changed all the kind of conflated pronouns to there.
To whose law or to BOCES?
We did as a
The district did.
district
Okay, because I mean,
in their policy.
the law stated at the end of this is saying, it says that in all of them actually it says her, not there.
Okay.
So shouldn't it mirror what the law says?
Okay, so this policy is about nursing mothers having a location to breastfeed. And so is that a content difference, or that is just a language exception that you did?
Yeah, actually, I've worked with policies before, and they're supposed to mirror what the law is saying.
This is what BOCES suggests. Yeah, they did suggest
But
there.
the law actually says mother and her in several areas, because I actually looked up all the laws at the bottom of this policy.
So Avis, just so I understand, are you looking to have their restored back to her?
If you replace it with just employee, figure out a way to put employee, that employee is fine. But to me, it should mirror with what the law is stating. And the law has not changed it to pronouns. It specifically states her and it states mother. I know that, you receive recommendations, but are they looking at the actual laws that have not been changed to pronouns?
Anyone else?
I'll just say that I don't think that makes a change to the content or the spirit of the policy. And that what we're doing in making that change is making it consistent across all of our policies. Because before my time, those changes were made. And then I think the most important part of this is that we're outlining for nursing mothers that they have an appropriate, private, clean location when they return to work.
I'm just wondering, maybe we should table this and look into this a little bit more. If we do feel like there's a discrepancy between the laws that we're referring to at the end of the policy and actually changing the policy.
It doesn't make any difference. So if you'd like to do, if the board would choose to do one pronoun or the other, it doesn't make a difference. We could also replace it with a employee instead of a pronoun. It's fine too. I don't want to get into this discussion about this issue that doesn't have anything to do with this policy. The policy itself is about having a place for breastfeeding mothers, so that's what we should probably focus on. I don't want to table that because it's an important thing that we need to provide.
Do we not already have this policy in place? It's not going to be.
That part is new. That part is new.
This whole blue part
The
is
blue
new.
part is new.
Yeah.
So it be
It can, that it
provided and the district will not retaliate.
cannot be the restroom, all of those pieces.
Oh, I
We need the
understand that.
policy.
I understand that. I'm just concerned with being consistent with the laws that we are referring to in the bottom of this
The
policy.
content is consistent with the law. The semantics may be inconsistent as far as those specific words, but the
If you would like-
content of the policy is.
If you'd like for the second read, I will remove all the pronouns and replace it with employee.
And my other question is, I saw that there's a 3-year restriction. I didn't see that in any of the laws. Why is it restricted to 3 years?
That is what was recommended.
Okay, because some mothers do express milk more than 3 years.
But that's what's recommended, 3 years.
Can we look into that, please, with the law? I know it's a recommendation, but I didn't see anywhere in the law how long.
So, okay, so can you tell me where in the policy that you're referring to?
Sorry, let me see if I can find it.
It's in,
That's not a new part of that, right?
No.
it's in section E.
It's page.
I got it. So I would imagine that the law probably says that that's how long you get that unpaid break time.
Which law?
one of the laws that's referenced in the bottom of the policy. So these are things that the policy committee reviews and makes recommendations on. And so it is admirable that you went through these laws, but the policy committee does review those things too.
Oh, I don't
So
doubt
do the
that.
attorneys that make these recommendations.
I don't doubt that, but which, can you point out which law in the
I
bottom?
can't.
Yeah, you have to read through them.
Okay, I actually couldn't find 29.
206-C.
Which one is it?
206-C guarantees breastfeeding mothers the right to pump milk at work for 3 years after giving birth.
You said 3 months?
3 years.
Oh, 3 years.
Thank you, Francis.
According to New York State Department of Health. And
Where is it on here? You said 296?
206-C.
Labor law sections, third from the bottom.
Yep.
The last one listed under labor law sections is 206-C.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Anything else on this policy? What's next? Student physicals. Anyone have anything on that?
Yes, I was curious. I just noticed that the health exam or the health examination policy, it states the policy states parent or persons in parental relation. And I think that makes sense, but then later on, one of our other policies says only parents and it strikes guardians. So I'm just wondering, again, there's a slight inconsistency in these things, and if we're trying to make the policies cohesive across the board, maybe we need to just kind of look at the wording in that as to where one seems to omit guardians and the other one is including them.
Can you tell me where that we're looking? Does this one omit guardians?
No, it does not.
It says
Which one?
relation, parental
This
relation.
one's,
Which
I
one
guess the
omitted
concussion
guardians?
management.
yes, it's the concussion management one. We struck out guardians throughout the entire policy.
It has some parental relations with them.
So we're okay with this one and we'll catch that when we get to concussion?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on the student physicals? All right, let's go to concussion management.
She's referring to page 5.
I see it. That makes sense. I don't know why guardians was struck.
It does on the CNT, kind of define parents and parental relations. When parents, which I assume would transfer through to the rest of the document, it's just a different style.
Yeah.
Elsewhere.
So maybe it needs to say or
It needs-
parental relation.
Right.
It needs to be the style we're using on this.
So rather than just strike guardian, replace.
Anything else on concussion?
We should not have a policy.
No.
Concussion.
No, I agree, I wish we didn't, I wish that
Which concussions?
concussions weren't a thing. Yeah.
Anything else on, so we're done with concussion, due process complaints.
Again, there's a lot of his or her. Flashed out the law, I checked the laws on this also, and it does say his or her in the law, so if we can.
And it's changed to there. That's because that is consistent with every other policy we have in the policy. Well, probably not every other, because there's so many policies that it's hard to keep those kinds of things consistent, but to the
I
extent.
think that
we
was
could,
part of the overhaul.
So let's just find and replace. Sometimes there's an extra space or something.
Yep. It's gender neutral, correct.
Anyone else? Anything else? Okay. So that concludes our first reading of these policies. Next item we have is informational. BOCES annual meeting is March 29th. Budget vote election is April 19th. Annual meeting dinner reservations were due by March 3rd. So I'm going. Francis is going. Anyone else? You go. Good.
I wanted to,
We get to stay.
food, I wanted to have the
hope so.
food, but I
The
can't
students-
go.
Food is good.
It's the students last time.
I'm pretty sure it was.
It's at least their shot.
And they had an enormous dessert they just handed out, like take home containers because no one can eat it.
Then I would like you to bring me
Sure.
The central office is open 8 to 4.
The March 20, lastly, the March 21st, 2023 Board of Education meeting will be held in this location again. So,
Just to note, we have 2 this month, which is
Yeah.
Yeah,
because of budget.
Use a different microphone and thing.
Yeah.
A slightly longer cord.
right. And next up is executive session. Motion to move into executive session to discuss student residency issues and real estate. Do I have a motion?
Almost.
Got it. Francis and Melissa?
Yes.
Thank you.
Either.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? And for those of you in the audience, we're going to go into executive session. When we come out, we're going to close that and then we'll close the regular meeting. There's not going to be any more regular business tonight. So thank you for coming.
Jeff, 5 degrees. 5 degrees warmer this room needs to be. Or you could just wear one.
Think of the shop.
No!
Think of the shop that you're saying,
So
when you go outside.